Well, good day. It is the 21st of April, 2021. And again, I'm going to be getting to the NCIS. We'll get there. I don't know it's all that interesting, but we'll get to the Naval Criminal Investigative Service. But what I want to talk about today is something that I think a lot of people who send me emails have questions about, and probably something that's percolating in your mind if you want to go into law enforcement. And that is, which federal agency, of all of them, which federal law enforcement agency is the most dangerous? Which one am I most likely to get shot? Which one am I most likely to have to shoot somebody? Which one am I most likely to have an aggressive, violent encounter with the criminal element? And it's something that's kind of hard to measure, but I think I've got a good measure of doing it. But first, let me preface this by saying, with regards to which agency, if we're going to compare federal agencies to local police departments being uniformed police officer, let's say New York, Chicago, LA, Miami, there is no question that being a uniformed police officer is more dangerous than being a federal agent. Now, why is that? The answer is quite simple. Uniformed police, state troopers, you're stopping people, you don't know who you're stopping. Okay? So you're always rolling the dice when you make a stop. Maybe he's just got a air freshener in the back, but he's wanted for armed robbery. Okay? You didn't know that when you stopped him, but he knew that. So he's got a benefit that you don't have. Now, one benefit that you have with the federal government, with most federal agencies, and I'm going to wall off the Border Patrol because they're different, but certainly DEA, FBI, ICE, ATF, all of them, you know who you're going after. Okay, the federal government picks and chooses who they're going to prosecute. We're not police officers. So you focus on criminal organizations. And, certainly you don't know always who's going to show up to a drug deal or something like that, but you know that they're bad guys or girls, okay? They're all criminals. And they're, drugs and guns go together. 90% of the time people you're going to arrest, they're going to be armed, okay? So that means you can take protective measures. You're going to have, enough agents on the street, enough officers on the street. Certainly you'll be wearing your ballistic vest. You're going to have your, certainly your machine gun, or and be very well prepared for an enforcement action. Okay, so which of these agencies, and again, what is the methodology to use in determining dangerousness? How do you do that? And I suppose there's different ways of doing it, but to use the number of officers or agents killed in the line of duty or who die as a result of the line of duty is not a good measure. And the reason for that is many agencies, for instance, Customs and Border Protection, which I think is a very safe agency in terms of violence against officers, they have lost a lot of officers in the last year due to COVID. And that's not surprising. If you're working at a port of entry and you're handling passports, you're coming in contact with thousands of people, maybe a day. And, if you're susceptible to COVID and you get it, and, particularly if you're not in the best of physical condition, it could be fatal, So they've had a lot of officers who've died as a result of COVID. So, but does that make the agency dangerous? I think not. I'm not going to count that as a huge factor because the vaccine is out, and that's not what most people are thinking of when we're thinking about, is an agency dangerous? Is it not dangerous? So what I did is I looked at the number of arrests that an agency reports per year. And what I found is they've largely remained constant. And again, I'm going to leave out the Border Patrol right now because they're a different animal completely. And to a certain extent, I'm going to leave out the marshals a little bit because their statistics are hard to come by. They report everyone who enters federal custody as an arrest, which that's about how many people enter federal custody. They're arrested by the FBI, DEA, whatever, and they're referred for federal prosecution. They're taken to a federal courthouse. They're processed by the marshals. And if they're counting those folks as arrests, you're going to have tens of thousands of arrests, but it really doesn't reflect enforcement action. You know, if you're going to the state prison and picking up Joe Schmo, who's got a federal detainer for bank robbery because he's finished his state sentence, and now you're going to transfer him to a federal prison. Well, that's an arrest, but is that a dangerous arrest? Not really. Okay, the type of arrests that I'm speaking of are enforcement arrests, people who are not in custody, who you're taking into custody, not voluntary surrenders either, like to the courthouse, I'm going to surrender on such and such a date so I can be sent to a federal prison. Again, the marshals do a lot of that. So again, and also shootings, shooting incidents. That's a good indicator because, again, agents are only supposed to fire their weapon, when they're in imminent danger. As you look at this table, and this is the DOJ, again, 2000 to 2003, but again, I think the numbers remain fairly constant. One thing that's going to stand out is they break it down into 4 categories: enforcement, operations, intentional, and you may or may not be able to see this on the graph. Non-enforcement, unintentional, okay? Enforcement operations, unintentional. These are accidental discharges, they're unintentional. And then the 4th category being animal control. And during that period of time, the ATF had 14 shootings that they intended to do, okay? 12 which were non-enforcement, unintentional, and 4 which were animal control. DEA shot 38 times intentionally at people, okay, with about 3,500 agents, okay? 9 which were enforcement unintentional, 25 non-enforcement unintentional, and 23 which were animal control. So you combine these two numbers, 38 and 23, 38, 48, 58, about 61 intentional shootings, And the same thing, the FBI had 31 intentional, 3 enforcement unintentional, 43 accidental discharges, and 23 animal control. So again, it's roughly the same as DEA, but the difference is, you've got a huge number of FBI agents compared to DEA. There's 11,000 plus FBI agents, fewer than 5,000 DEA agents. The marshals had 22, intentional, 2 enforcement operations unintentional, 8 accidental discharges, 10 dog cases. So they had about 32 cases of shooting, so out of a total of 42. So what this points to is a couple of things. Number one, there's a lot of unintentional discharges, okay? Which means that, especially with semi-automatic pistols, even with trained people, you can easily accidentally discharge your weapon. As a DEA agent demonstrating to a classroom of children, found out, it's very easy to do. The Border Patrol, they had about 226 shootings in a 3-year period, but they've got 20,000 Border Patrol agents. Okay, compared to, again, it's more than 4 times the number of DEA agents. So again, I would conclude that of the agencies, the ones that are the most physically dangerous, and it's not surprising, it's drugs and money and guns. Those things are the most dangerous. And DEA operations, we really don't have white collar criminals that we pursue. Our regulatory of DEA, the regulatory function of the agency is handled by a different group of employees altogether who don't carry weapons. So again, DEA, it's going to be just strictly criminal, enforcement of major violators. What about the ATF? They have a significant number of shootings as well. But again, the ATF, it kind of, a lot of their work is drug-related work. Believe it or not, they do a lot of federal drug enforcement in conjunction with DEA. They don't do a lot of alcohol cases. In fact, I've never heard of them doing any. The tobacco cases, they don't do too many of them. It's not to say it's not a major problem. It is. In the firearms cases, Federal Firearms Act, there just isn't that many. Most of their federal firearms prosecutions are the result of persons carrying firearms during the commission of a federal crime, such as drug trafficking. I'm just going to say a lot of their cases, a lot of the ATF stuff, it stems from drug-related activity, working with state and locals against gangs. So again, I think the most dangerous federal agency to work for in terms of dangerous enforcement operations, it's the DEA. Okay, what about the FBI? A lot of what the FBI does is intelligence type collection, anti-terrorist stuff, intelligence, counterintelligence, but that's not really all that dangerous. The marshals, yes, picking up fugitives, very dangerous. But again, a lot of their fugitive arrests, when you look at the charts, and it looks like they've got tons and tons of arrests. You have to remember, not all of these arrests are a result of kicking down a door and getting a fugitive, or chasing somebody on the street and catching the fugitive. Many fugitives are caught. The guy's got a air freshener in his car. The police turn on their lights. Oh, he's wanted by the federal government for failure to appear. Click, click, call the marshals, and the marshals come get him. That counts as a federal arrest. Okay? If you thought that the 2,000 some odd deputy marshals were making all of these arrests, they would be working day, night. They would just be like, they would never be off the street, and that's not the case. So again, it's how agencies count arrests. And what counts as an arrest, like in the Border Patrol, which is anybody they contact, whether it's a 10-year-old kid or someone who just swam the river, but they depose no threat, they're still counted as an arrest. But again, if you look at violent arrests, arrests of violent people, arrests of people who've been previously deported, it's not anywhere near as significant. Although, again, that makes that job, Border Patrol agent, very dangerous because you don't know who you're stopping. And often you're in the middle of the desert and you're alone or with just a partner at night. So that can make that, job very similar to that of a police officer. So I would say the DEA and then the Border Patrol, the most dangerous federal agencies to work for. Okay, the most dangerous jobs, the most shooting incidents. The most likely you're going to get assaulted. Most likely you're going to end up using your weapon in the line of duty. Okay, what would be the least dangerous? I think the NCIS is pretty safe. The IRS, pretty safe. Okay, you might have to have a EMS there when you make an arrest, but it's just because the 75-year-old guy who you're arresting, he's having chest pains because they finally caught up with him and he needs his nitroglycerin, but he's not going to fight you. Tax violators aren't violent typically. The FBI, again, you've got your bank robbery squad. Okay, they're pretty much, very much out of the drug business now. So the bank robbery squads, those are very dangerous people. But what about other? Well, again, child pornographers, they can get dangerous, as you saw in that case a few months ago. 2 agents were killed. So maybe this has given you some insight, as to what you want to apply to, what you don't want to apply to. But again, if you're looking to do more white-collar type of work, or work that is not going to involve physical danger, certainly the Office of Inspector General of the various agencies, the DCIS in the Army, the Naval Criminal Investigative Service, the various internal, IRS, Secret Service, okay? You're not going to make many arrests at all in those agencies. They don't make a lot of arrests. It's very rare that one of their officers or agents is hurt in the line of duty. ICE, you're going to have a fair number of. But again, you have to remember something. A lot of major cities no longer cooperate with ICE. Okay, they are sanctuary cities, and this is another problem that we've got. and that is our politics in this country have become so polarized. On one side you'll have cities saying we're sanctuary cities, we're not going to call ICE even if the police encounter I think that's the correct word today, is undocumented person. Okay, but again, if they catch somebody with committing a crime, a drunk drivers, I mean, Chicago police, they don't call ICE, which I think they should. I think they should, but they don't. Okay, in other cities you have huge marijuana dispensaries, despite the fact that it's illegal. Now, in my state, the governor, who I've got my own opinions about, but he wanted to convene this thing to try to get rid of assault weapons, which is a weapon that has a certain capacity, or a magazine that has a high capacity. And just about every county, except one or two, said, we're not going to comply. And some of the sheriffs, including mine, said, I'll deputize every legal gun owner in the county, and there'll be law enforcement officers, and you can't prosecute them. So, if the Biden administration tries to use the ATF to go after so-called assault weapons, good luck. Number one, I wouldn't support it, but number two, you're going to find Second Amendment sanctuary areas of the country. So you see a lot of the trend is our politics is very polarized right now, and a lot of localities are not likely to cooperate, as much with the federal government. So hopefully it's been a little bit enlightening to you, and I promise I will get to the Naval Criminal Investigative Service on the next one. Thank you.